So welcome again to the second part actually of Pure Self Within. And so the topic is basically staying true to the true self or the pure self within. So it's always nice to start with a reflection. Reflection is the right term to use when it comes to taking a pause, not to stop my thoughts, not to forget about things, recede away from the world. Reflection is actually about touching base within myself, checking in, being honest with myself, checking in with what my priorities are. Sometimes my inner world can be quite noisy. There could be a conflict of priorities, even if that's not what I want. There could be lots of different opinions, either within myself or opinions of others that I have internalized. This is why many have noticed that when I have some quiet time, solitude, there is an inner silence. And in that inner silence, I can start to hear my own voice. I can start to feel which thoughts are thoughts that come from me from the heart, which thoughts come from noise, from outside of myself, from the image, ego. And in that inner silence, that clarity isn't something that I can intellectualize. It becomes a very clear feeling. It is a feeling that I used to be able to have full access to. I used to have full mastery over this capacity to sense what feels right, what resonates in my heart. But through time, through forgetting myself, I have let the door open to many other things, with the mixture inside, so much noise, and feeling so many things that aren't really who I am. I can become numb to the true feelings of who I am. In this inner silence, this solitude, I strengthen that capacity to feel what is right, to sense which opinions inside are actually based on truth, not opinions. This inner silence helps me to reveal who I really am. My thoughts, my feelings, they are a mirror. And I look in this mirror of my mind as I learn to sort out which is me, which is not me. So just checking in with myself right now. What's brought me to this particular session? Where am I at in my own journey? So giving myself a few minutes. This is not necessarily anything that has to be shared on chat. It's just for yourself. Where am I at in my journey? No right or wrong answer. It's just a spiritual check-in. I can write down my answers if I wish. I can write down the question and I can revisit later. Where am I at in my own personal journey? And the second question, do I remember why I am on this journey, this personal journey for myself? And if that's a clear yes, then remember what that purpose is. Recall what that is, feel what that is, that drive, that interest. And if the answer is no or not too clear what that journey is, what is the purpose, let me just check in. What am I looking for? What is the purpose of my journey? Once again, I can just write it down if I have no answers. And another part of the spiritual check-in is, what discoveries have I made so far that I'm thinking about or dwelling on, focusing on? So what discoveries or realizations have I made lately that I've been thinking about, focusing on? And last question of the four of this spiritual check-in for myself. What challenges am I facing right now based on my journey? It could be directly related to my purpose, it actually is, may not seem like it, but it might also seem like it's a distraction from actually a deeper challenge that I don't realize. So, what challenges am I facing? So, I welcome you to keep those questions for yourself. It's actually a part of the intent of this workshop, is that, especially something that I have realized significantly lately, is that I need to keep my purpose, my reasons very, very clear. And I've known individuals who've gone to medical school, so I might have even shared this before, so I won't share it in depth. But I knew somebody at a very young age with a cancer that she did come out of, and she was remission. And I don't think she's at a point right now, since that was 30 years ago, that she has to have any surveillance. But since she was young, she wanted to go to medical school. And without, it was just a pull within herself that she had a scrapbook as a young child that she always added to it all the time as to what it was that really mattered to her. And so, in a way, she kept it very clear and vibrant within herself. And so, by the time I met her, I think it was her third time applying for medical school, and she was not fazed. Now, that's not, and some people think, well, it was just how she sees things, but it has a lot to do with this foundation that she had created within herself, maybe unknowingly. And this is so we have these capacities, and we all have things that we've aspired to before. And these are very physical aspirations, but we do take those skills and use them in any way we need to. And so those skills can be transferable to this, because ultimately it is our sense of consciousness how we use any skill. And in this case, we're talking about keeping things very clear and vibrant. So the reflection questions are really important because it helps you grow, and it helps you to develop a sense of keeping the ingredients in this journey very clear for yourself, because it can sometimes quite easily be sort of ignored and taken for granted. And we all know how sometimes there may be a conflict of priorities, even though we really don't care about a project that we're doing at that moment or something going on. But we do have these habits of actually focusing on things and sort of get reeled into that. So keep that in mind. And perhaps you're welcome to share anything in the chat box or unmute yourself. But in light of those questions, now as we mentioned, the topic for today, which is the second part of the pure self within, which is staying true to the pure self within. So staying true to the pure self within. Now we could have called it staying pure, but which is exactly the same thing. But that phrase in itself is actually quite loaded, but it's basically the same thing. Staying true to the pure self within. So if you have any thoughts, and again, this is for yourself as well, this reflective question, what has drawn you to take this session today? Any thoughts at all for yourself? Perhaps maybe we can back things up a little bit. I don't know if souls remember the previous session. Oh, reconnect with myself, my true self. Yes. I want to keep reminding myself of my priorities. As you said, they sometimes get shuffled up or changed. Yes, definitely. That's a huge thing. You know, we often say that in this particular study, it's a challenge to stay in the study. The reason why is because there's a lot of things that can actually pull us out of this study. And that study is actually a very incognito thing. It's very invisible. It has nothing to do with dressing in white, like you might see me right in the camera right now, or to be, you know, there is certain spiritual principles that are suggested in this particular spiritual lifestyle, but I can also get stuck in those as well. We are so good at being habits of creature, and so there's a lot of stuff that we can do that can just sort of be routine. And so I need to be very careful. And what Pauline and Sheila, you had both shared, are actually very connected. That there is, you know, my priorities is very connected to my sense of understanding of who I really am. Now, I know it's been a while since our last session, which was about the pure self, and there have been sessions in between, so you may not remember, and that's totally fine. But is there anything that you can recall that you took away from that pure self within workshop in terms of, again, your overall journey? Soul consciousness and self-respect. So Pauline shared soul consciousness and self-respect. Sheila shared, I remember the story about the yogurt, which stuck with me, and I use it as a reminder to keep adding more of the good things I want to have in my life. Yeah, it's funny that I think about that analogy quite often. And when I remember using that, thinking about that analogy when I was younger, must have been, possibly maybe 15, 16 at the time, and I could not even comprehend what it is that I saw. But it stayed with me. It stayed with me, the soul. You know, this deep personality who has lost my personality, got engulfed into this personality of Nora, this unreal sense of self, but it stayed with me. And this whole thing about adding more of the good things even wasn't in my vicinity at that time. But to be able to connect, you know, what does pure mean? What does self mean? And this aspect of self-respect. And what is going to be good for me? That in itself is a journey. And so I actually do recall from everyone who had shared from the last that workshop, the feelings actually. I remember the feelings that those had shared, and there were feelings of hope, feelings of being refreshed, feelings of renewal, feelings of feeling very connected, that there is a true self of who I am that deeply matters and resonates with our heart. And so that's actually how this workshop was really inspired, actually. And I wanted to share this picture for you. I believe you can see this. Yes, it's a picture of a sapling. And this is what it's like when you start to discover the truth of who you are. It is like a sapling. It is very delicate. It is brand new, but not really new because there's actually always been a sense of who you are. But in the sense that it's like this breath of fresh air, in the sense of everything else that has been mundane and ordinary and heavy and gray, that there's a real sense of who you are that we are learning to awaken again. And it is like a sapling. And why do you think that I would use this analogy, a sapling? To remind us that we will grow into something much more like the sapling will. That's a good one, definitely. There's something else very specific though. There is definitely growth for sure. Looks fresh and vibrant. That's another one that's very good. What else? I know I have a very focused answer here, but all of these are true answers too. So Sheila shared the soil and sunshine is very apparent in this photo. Yes, I was trying to find a sapling and this is the one that would actually fit in the shared screen here. Representing things we need to nurture ourselves. Yes, the key thing is their nurture. Why would we use the word nurture? Why did I just use a light bulb? I could have just used a light bulb. I could use a shining sun. Why a sapling? Any thoughts? And it's sort of connected to that word nurture. Fresh, vibrant. It is life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It starts from a beautiful foundation of a seed. Yes, yes, these are excellent answers. What's the difference from a sapling and a tree? Because all of your answers are all very true as well if I chose a tree. It's small and fragile. Absolutely. So this is this interesting feeling when you look at a sapling is that it is powerful and vibrant and refreshing and new, which are all very powerful, hopeful feelings, but it's also small and fragile, meaning that this pure sense that I awaken to about myself, if I don't nurture it, because there's also this huge investment I have of this false sense of self, it is very easy for this sapling to get crushed. But alas, there is good news still because it comes from the seed, and the seed is eternal. The seed of who I am, my identity as a spiritual being, the pure sense of who I am, will always override the test of time regardless. However, to be able to bring that sense of identity and awareness into life, into action, into decisions, into choices, into action and interaction, that's the part that begins at a very fragile state. Does that make sense? So this is why we chose this aspect of the sapling, but also why, for those who continue to take the any sessions, inner fitness sessions, continue with the workshops. What you're actually doing is nurturing you, the sapling. There is a real sense of who you are, you, the soul. You may not feel it, but right now, every moment you resonate with anything that has to do with the truth of who you are, realize it's because you're a soul that it resonates with you. There's a lot of other thoughts, a lot of other priorities that seem to compete. There's a lot of other personality types within ourselves because we've gone through a lot of different, very physical life experiences. But the reason why we don't stop, we keep coming back, we keep wanting to refresh, we keep wanting to feel who we really are, even we feel frustrated that we get pulled away, it's because it's me, the soul, in the midst of all this unrealness that is resonating. And that's a very powerful reminder you need to tell yourself. First and foremost, it's that recognition. It's you, the soul. Forget about how you feel it, where you sit, just that very awareness. That is huge. That's a big part about keeping this sapling of awareness alive. And this word vulnerable is used. And it's not to say that this pure sense of who you are is fragile and vulnerable and is completely weak against all the forces of falsehood. It's more about actually appreciating what kind of attention, what kind of investment on an inner level I need to make. And we definitely do that with other things. We always do. How many of you have ever bought something that's new and how much you take care of it? And I remember, when you get your first car and it's brand new, if you can afford a fresh brand new car, or you get your first phone. These are very, they're very superficial examples, but you just hope that there's no cut, there's no scratch on it, there's no scuff, and then the moment, it has this first or second or third scuff, you don't really care anymore. You have your first dent in your car, the next dents don't seem to matter as much. It's because of wanting to keep things very fresh and new. So another thing that's quite interesting, and the reason why we're mentioning about these things is, again, for a practical level. We do want to actually highlight some practical things about what this is all about. So I know that has been mentioned about, the things that you have all mentioned about actually are all something that I would note down. So if you have a chance, I can even see if we save the chat box and I will send it to you, is because it has everything to do with the sense of self. And it has everything to do with the experience as well. The word fresh and vibrant has been used, for example, and this about the sunlight and the soil is like, what is going to be needed to keep that sapling growing? What is going to nurture that sapling? As you can see in this picture, there's the soil, there's the sunlight, we know implied, there's also the water. So that's a physical level. So I'd like to use also another analogy is that often when we talk about purity, we also talk about babies, little people. What do we do? How do we protect little babies, or why? Why do we feel so protective? They are small and fragile too. Delicate. Physically speaking, they're actually pretty tenacious, but of course, relatively speaking, they're definitely very fragile. But there's also, what do you think? What else in terms of the fragility? Are we talking about just physical, or do you think there's more? pure and sensitive. Yes. Mm-hmm. They have to be taught how to care for themselves. Yes. Yes. And so, the example of babies is actually pretty easy. When you think of pure, it's pretty easy to think about babies and what that means. It's something very clean in terms of their sense of self, their personality. Of course, they might be too young to actually be very conscious of that, but for us, of how we see them and how we perceive them, what we experience about them, it's definitely true. So we're using these very physical examples. So when it comes to protecting that purity, that sensitivity, that fragility, that delicateness about babies, we're again using a physical example, moving towards the spiritual. Sheila has mentioned about they have to be taught how to care for themselves, which is like the intent of this session. What are some physical examples of how you would take care of babies? I mean, I think we kind of gave some of the answers already with the physical plant, that sapling. What are some thoughts about that? How do you protect that purity, that sensitivity, that delicateness as babies grow up? Feeding and clothing, using baby products. Great physical examples. Now, when it comes to food, is it kind of any kind of food? Is it any kind of clothing? And also, what's so special about special baby products? Baby foods are pure, they have less chemicals. If you usually look, lately I've had to buy some baby-like products for someone's baby, and definitely you'll look, they tend to have very, very few ingredients in them. This aspect of pure again. Nutritious food is best for their growth, but I know most parents get relaxed on the sugar rules as the children get older, for sure. This whole thing about being sweet. Yep. And then there are some parents who are like, no sugar. Or it's like if it's going to be something that's sweet, they again also look at the packages. So the ingredients, what is the diet of what these babies have? Natural products as much as possible. Very good. You can probably start to make a list, and even clothing, more and more so. It's like, is the clothing, there's more organic stuff out there, and like always caring about, you notice out there about the texture of the clothing. Things tend to be quite usually bright in color, if you notice as well. I love to eat baby food. I used to too when I was like 10 years old. There's something that was just very simple about baby food. So thinking about these examples, I know I gave them away as well for the sapling, thinking about this this true pure sense of self. What on a spiritual level does that mean to take care of that true pure sense of who I am? And you can use the examples that you've given, see how that translates into a spiritual way. making sure we get what we need for our own growth. And that's the question too, is what do we need for our own growth? Taking care of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Yes, and I know that the word nurturing was used earlier. What nurtures you? You, the pure self of who you are. You mentioned here, and Pauline's mentioned about taking care of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. It's a good question to keep within ourselves. Time alone to reflect. Time in nature. So this is a great comment about nature. What is it about nature that really attracts individuals? Time with hobbies and creative pursuits. What is it about nature? What is it about hobbies and creative pursuits? And I'm inviting you to look deeper. There's something deeper within nature that individuals are really attracted by. There's something deeper in the hobbies and the creative pursuits. Something deeper in there. They both help you get into a state of a peaceful flow. Exactly. And there's probably a lot of other feelings in there. And it's very important to keep it very clear. It's the feelings that these different things actually help us to get into. And the reason why it becomes something that's really important to be clear is because you, as a spiritual being, you actually have an inner reservoir of experiences of peace and flow and love and compassion. And for a very long time, because of not accessing it, we have thought that you would only be able to find it in things around us. And why we're sharing about that is not to say that there's anything wrong with being in nature or doing hobbies or being creative, but it's about learning right now is actually bringing the flow back inwards in terms of where that source of all of that value truly is. Because when it comes to nature, when it comes to hobbies and creative pursuits, it's you, the being, who's experiencing, and you, the being, how you perceive and experience things. Especially if there are individuals who live in places where nature isn't cooperating, but they've had to still be able to find meaning and value in situations like that. Or I know individuals, I work with individuals who have chronic pain, and sometimes such intense pain they can't even move. And so then they're forced to really look at what exactly is fulfilling and meaningfulness. And this is a bigger piece that is a part of the journey in self-exploration. And so any other things that help to nurture and protect the sense of this real, true sense of me is what we're going to explore. If you have any other thoughts to share before we go deeper into this. Using our imagination is very powerful. The picture of the sapling even helped me to feel that. And that's why it's very connected to this aspect that Pauline had mentioned about taking care of our thoughts, our feelings and our actions. And then Pauline has also mentioned connecting with the Supreme Soul who is purifying us. And that's definitely, I really hope we have time to go into that as well. Is that, now I was really reflecting about that today, is that you've seen that image, and I'll show you that image. So we use this image here as just basically kind of like a container to explain what I really am. is that I'm just consciousness. I'm awareness itself. Whatever I think about, whatever I'm aware of, becomes my reality. And whatever I think about, whatever my awareness is, comes at the level of thoughts. And those thoughts create feelings, impressions, and experiences. So this image, I'm just going to use the mouse here, pardon this title here, is that trying to be able to describe yourself, you're just consciousness, where thoughts arise, as you are probably aware, if you were really to reflect on it, not try to force yourself to feel, but just be aware. Thoughts begin right behind the center of the forehead. Have you noticed if you get stressed, it seems to be right around the area. This is where thoughts emerge. They think it's the brain. People think it's the brain, but just like there's the computer, the hardware, the motherboard, the processor, and all that, there needs to be the software inside, the operating system, for that computer to be able to function. But at the same time, if that software doesn't have the hardware, that software's capacity cannot actually be used. So in that sense, me, the being, consciousness, me, the soul, I am consciousness, I am the software. What I rely on to experience is my awareness, what I'm thinking about, what my perception is, what my beliefs are, what my feelings are like, what my attitudes are like. That shapes everything. And from those feelings, those thoughts, first of all, thoughts and awareness and attitudes and perceptions, these rays of light, trying to describe what happens when you have that impact of having a certain awareness, a point of awareness. I don't mean a physical point, but have a centralizing awareness. What happens when there's a centralizing awareness, and what comes from that centralizing awareness? If you've ever had that experience where you go into a situation, you feel like, I shouldn't be here. There's something that, I don't belong here, or this is going to be a bad experience. Your centralizing awareness at that moment is informing everything. And that's what those rays coming out of this point of light is trying to describe on a very pictorial level. Your experience has everything to do with your sense of awareness. And awareness is something so invisible. And your true sense of awareness, your original sense of awareness, is basically pure. And that awareness is at that level of vibration that is peaceful, that's loveful, that's powerful, that's pure, that's bliss, that's truth and balance. That's what your true sense of self is like. Now, if we go back to that picture of the sapling right now, if you were to imagine that there's a seed there, you wouldn't be able to know what the capacity of that seed is until it actually was planted and it was grown. And when it was grown, you can see its capacities. And that's a part of using that example, is that as awareness, it's only when you have thoughts and you can you actually feel what quality of life really means. And so if we were just consciousness with no sense of actually living life, what's the point? It's actually feeling, the love, feeling peace, feeling lightness, but you feel that in the midst of physicality. So just like the computer, the software can only function and express its capacity in the midst of the hardware that it uses. In that way, we are expressing our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, our attitudes, and our natural experience, our original experience of that, are these different qualities I've mentioned. There's 7 qualities of you, the soul. So it has everything to do with that. You are simply just, and I don't mean simply in a like a simpleton kind of way, but how powerful it is to realize that you are consciousness. But we have come so far from ourself because we are now informed by our environment, by the image, by the people and relationships and possessions, the circumstances to inform our awareness and therefore our experience. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is why without the awareness that I'm consciousness, that I am a soul, you can definitely still take care of, having good thoughts and, having a good attitude, but it will never take you to the nth degree of the unlimitedness of who you are. Because when you think you're a body on a very subtle level, and also a gross level, you will feel you're still defined by things around you. So this is why the awareness that I am consciousness, we call it soul consciousness, that you're, because the nature of a soul is pure. Now we could have said, rock consciousness, a cell consciousness, a table consciousness. There is a pure function and form for all of these other objects that I'm talking about. You know what is the true function of a shoe. And sometimes when I go and visit somebody, their house is kind of messy, and sometimes they need to prop their door open, and they use this old beat up shoe just to, stick it right underneath the door just to keep it open. That is not what the original function of that shoe is for, but now it's acting like it's a door stopper. So I know that's a silly example, but what I'm saying is that we have forgotten the experience and therefore how we naturally function and operate, that we used to naturally function from a place that is of peace. And peace is so different from being peaceful because of nature, but peace meaning that you're completely stable for no reason at all, that you're stable and light and at ease, even if someone is doing something that might seem to upset other people, because that nature of peace is just who you are. So you're not being peaceful for someone to prove something, not just for the situation. Oh, it's a difficult situation, I'm going to be peaceful now, but it's just who you are. And that's why babies are so attractive and appealing to this memory of who we are, is because they're not trying to do anything. You actually feel that vibration of the soul. You're actually feeling what that true nature of yourself is like. And so this is why also the example of a rose is used, is because a rose is always going to be a rose whether somebody, appreciates it or not. A rose is always going to look beautiful, whether someone notices or not, is always going to emit that fragrance, whether somebody smells it or not. But because that rose comes from that seed, and I know that aspect about the sapling that comes from the seed was used. The thoughts that you had all shared about why the picture of a sapling was used, they're all very valid, very powerful aspects. And it's all because of now starting to go back to what the seed of who I am is that my true sense, there's a real beautiful experience of who I really, really am. But I need to actually cultivate my awareness to the original awareness that I used to have. So this is why when Pauline shared too about having to be very careful about my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions, because it's about, for example, software. When it's healthy software for a computer and it's functioning to its optimum, that software is going to make the computer operate in a way so that it's smooth, it's constructive, it's creative, the function of what a computer is to do. If that software had some viruses in it and start to instruct the computers to start doing things that that's not what the software was meant to be. That software is now doing something to dishonor itself. I know we're sort of personalizing or personifying it, but that's a part of why even actions, I want to take care of my actions with the awareness of what my true nature is because I'm honoring myself. Without the awareness of being a soul, then again, we start to disconnect thoughts and attitudes to just having good thoughts and good attitudes. It's all just at that level that's a little still too much on the surface. They won't be sustainable. So this awareness of my true nature is really, really important. So I'm just going to pause for a moment to see if anyone has any thoughts or questions. And so we'll just have a little reflection right now. And we always invite souls to join the experience sessions. So those are the actual guided meditation sessions that happen in the evenings on the Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6:45 to 7:30, and on the Sundays it's a full hour from 6:30 to 7:30. And the whole intention of those, and they're all on YouTube, so on the Calgary YouTube Calgary Center channel, is really to actually learn to go into the experience. Is that it's not just consciousness, because that can just sound like a concept or just a thing. I am living consciousness. I actually have a very pure experience of who I am. And the interesting thing is, because we're actually in physicality, we have lots of experiences, lived experiences, but it's only because of in physicality that I can actually access the feeling of peace. It's just like a physical seed. You won't be able to see what its capacity is until it grows. It needs to be in soil. So it's interesting, the body, we call ourselves human beings. Humus is the body, being is me, the soul. It's when I am in a body, in physicality, that I can actually experience and remember what the feeling of who I truly am is, my original sense of self. So we're just going to have another reflection here. Once again, that image is just meant to be a means to describe what I'm like. Some do find it meaningful to picture a point of light, or that I am a point of light, but there's actually a deeper sense of what that means. And on a deeper sense, I have forgotten just how powerful I am. I have actually forgotten how powerful thoughts can be, how powerful awareness is. And at this moment, it's not about trying to convince myself. And maybe I do feel it is true, but maybe I don't. But this journey is to actually begin to realize what I really am. That I am this being who can create my world, my experience of living simply through my awareness, my thoughts. But that's not all. I'm actually really a guest inside this body. As consciousness, I cannot be seen. And that is why, even though we don't remember who we are, every being in this world is seeking for some solitude in their life, some alone time. Because in that alone time, even if it's in the mountains, maybe it's in the corner of their house, maybe it's at the park, maybe it's at the kitchen table, it's that quiet time where they don't have to be on all the time, where they really get to check in. What really matters to me? Or they get to really feel, at least right now, I don't have to try so hard. I don't have to answer to projects and how I have to be in the presence of others. That feeling, it's like a feeling of letting go at that moment, a bit of respite. And in that respite, I get to pause from all the different roles and the hats that I wear. I get to feel more real, even if I don't know what that means. What nature brings out, what some alone time brings out, is a feeling of letting go. The feeling that I'm not holding on to expectations and roles. It allows me to feel more grounded. And yet it's not the circumstances that help me feel grounded. That groundedness is actually my true nature coming out. When I grip on to expectations, roles, I can't feel myself anymore. That lightness, that simplicity, the natural sense of who I am. And in this quiet time, there is more of this inner stillness. I can start to feel what my own presence is like. This gentle peace, this simplicity, this lightness. This is my true nature, my own vibration I feel. But I need to keep my awareness very clear. It's because my true nature is that I am a soul, a being of consciousness. By nature, I am not defined by the past, by the image in the mirror. I am not defined by the circumstances. I'm not even defined by what opinions I've heard, interactions I've experienced. My true nature is pure. My true nature purely is a soul. My true nature is lightness and peace, true freedom. My true nature is clean at heart, full and abundant. My true nature is loving and yet free from expectations or needing anything in return. In other words, I am loving and detached, or loving and free. Free from loving for something, but just it's who I am. I'm this living being, the presence in this body. I'm actually just consciousness itself. But now my consciousness, the consciousness, my consciousness is so physical. My attitudes are so physical. My awareness is so physical. And this is why we've forgotten what our original sense of awareness is. And we also forgot the experience of what we're really like. We feel very physical, and our awareness is very physical. That image I see of that point of light in the rays is what it is as a soul in a body. When I was pure, when my awareness was truly that original sense of me, nothing is mine, I use the body just as a guest, that consciousness of who I am was very clean, very true. It was pure. No trace of physicality in my sense of self, in my awareness. And so what came from me, what emanated from me, was naturally happiness, truth, peace, love. So what needs to change is actually my awareness. That in true sense of who I truly am, I have never been defined by physicality, but it feels so real right now. And there's no one who can convince me otherwise except me, consciousness itself. That no matter what, even if anything happened to this body, I, the soul, I will always still come back to myself, because my true nature, my true sense of self, has nothing to do with the changes of time, the changes in physicality. I'm this being, this gentle presence in this body, this pure presence in this body. I am this pure vibration in this body. I'm simply remembering my original self. So what do you feel that I can do to basically funnel my attention to taking care of my real identity? What can I do? Spend time asking myself those selective questions you asked earlier and really listen to the answers. Absolutely. I was in a experiments in silence meeting yesterday, and we were spending the first 4 meetings about our own experiences and why we were in this project. Because the intent of this project eventually is to be able to create some programs for others to experience. But they were very meaningful meetings. But then we were getting to this meeting, which was about planning to do something. And I could feel that for myself, I was like, I wasn't there yet. I just really felt like I really have so much that needs to happen inside. And the reason why I knew was because we started planning and I could feel myself getting very extroverted. It's about, what needs to happen, in this project. And I could totally feel, it was a sense of feeling that I felt off. I could feel that I wasn't feeling it was being driven from the right place. And I was being honest in there too. I was like, you know what? I don't think that I have anything to offer right now. And that wasn't just me. There was another soul who was there. Like, I just have to work on myself. And I felt that they were really, I would say, honest answers. For me, it was an honest answer because I've been in situations where you're asked to do something and you're not listening to the inner signal inside. Can't really hear the answer inside, and you can feel when the more you're actually experiencing the true sense of who you are, you will feel if you're doing something that actually is honoring yourself or not. And so that's a really great one, spending time asking myself those selective questions. Nurturing the awareness of having that pure good thoughts for myself. Nurturing the awareness of having the pure good thoughts for myself and others, having the feelings and putting into action. Absolutely. And this is actually, you jumped into one of our things that we wanted to have on here, is how do I fortify, nurture, is actually using it. And these 2 answers, what you've given Sheila and Pauline, this is actually using it. Is that I need to actually, how do I use it? It's all an internal thing. Is that I want to start to reflect on things and make decisions based on that too. And so both of what you had both shared is connected to this overarching, because there's a few points on here I'd like to share before the end of the session, is that I want to be able to actually develop a consistent habit of actually building momentum and preserving momentum. And you can see mothers or even gardeners when they have saplings, or mothers when they have babies, like their entire attention is on that new baby, that young baby, those new saplings, because it's like this is a time where they have to grow. We need to take care of that. I need to be able to have that attitude within myself. So to translate this, some things I would like for you to write down, or if you would like to write down, is that there needs to be a momentum that exists internally so that my attention naturally goes towards nurturing this true original sense of who I am. And so if we're talking about transferring things from a very physical sense to a very spiritual sense, One of them is personal interest. Is that one of the reflective questions is that why am I doing this? Why does it matter to me to be connected to myself? Why does it matter to me I need to actually know the real me? And of course we all have textbook answers. We probably have answers that we have also answered to. The purpose is that I need to be very engaged in those answers. And that's not a physical thing. That's not an intellectual thing. I have to really find meaning in those answers. And again, you'll know the difference. It's one thing to sit here and say, like, today's a good day. Or when you really reflect and you found something really meaningful. Yep, today was a good day. I really found it was really productive. And it's not the kind of productivity. So this is the part of just starting to discern that there needs to be meaning and value, in investing this time. So that's one thing. The second thing is love. Now, what do I love? Do I love doing this? And as I mentioned in the very beginning of the session, I need to actually be very overt internally, not overt out there, but very like emerge very clearly. What is it that really matters to me? Because as what I know that Sheila has mentioned, the priorities get shuffled, and we all, even as Raj Yogis, it's the feeling like a project that matters, at that moment, the pull, it's the feelings that pull you. Intellectually, we know what really matters. What I'm trying to do when I build up this momentum, this reserve, is that I can access those meaningful feelings. What I really love, I can access it again and again, so it's so meaningful, I can access it in a second. And also so I can occupy my awareness throughout the day, my thoughts, my attention. There's a lot of time in the day actually where we don't have to invest our attention to what we're doing, when we're walking, when we're cooking, but it's like an art. It takes time to actually reflect on these things in a meaningful way, because we've kind of become quite passive. Just like when you watch TV, you just let the TV do the work, and we don't have to actually reflect on things in a meaningful way. At the same time, it's so fulfilling when we do. The third thing, which is connected to this meaningfulness and value, that's where we would direct our attention. And what is it that I love about this journey? Being very clear that that is connected to the third point is basically about I'm always seeking what's fulfilling. I'm always seeking what is attainment. We don't really use that word much here, at least in the West, but everything we do is always because of something that's fulfilling. So when we say we don't have time for something, it becomes an honest conversation. Part of those selective questions too, you can always add to it, is that where do I invest my time? Why am I investing my time in those things? And half the time we invest our time in things that really don't matter. And the reason why is we just haven't had a chance to really reflect and really be honest. Because when you really have the chance to really ask yourself, this becomes a very non-violent journey. You start to illuminate things like, what am I doing? Because more and more so, you'll be able to shift your attention, your choices, from a place that's actually meaningful, powerful, self-driven, motivated. And this is where spirituality has had some pretty negative connotations of force and suppression and avoidance. And that isn't what spirituality is. That's what has happened when we become so physicalized in our awareness. We call it body conscious. Signs of power has been physical force, physical suppression, even subtle suppression. Those are not signs of real power. So the remnants of actually body consciousness can get quite subtle and can operate even when I'm on this journey. So this protecting, this staying true to the pure me within, it is meant to be meaningful. So another thing in terms of practicing that experience that we just had, and that's why the experience sessions are very, very important, because it's about being able to experience that. Because I do want to take care of my thoughts, but I want to go into that pure experience of myself, that I am not defined by anything. I want to experience that. We're so engulfed into the experience of physicality. It's like as if it's normal to us right now. We know the dimensions of the body so well, right? But if you recall when you got, a car, whether it was new or old, you had to figure out the dimensions of it so that when you did a parallel parking, when you had to back up, you didn't really know exactly what the dimensions were. So once after a while, we get so used to the car, there's this familiarity. We know the dimensions of this body through and through now. We're so attached to it, so engulfed in it. But that experience of myself, this point of consciousness, but is a very full and rich experience, and I am not defined by anything. That's like a drill. If you remember, at least here in the West, we have all these fire drills, whether it's at work, at school. You're trying to practice something very clearly and concentrated so that when you need it, when there's a fire, you'll be able to know what to do. This is what we call a spiritual drill. So I want to have this pure experience of my pure form, of that pure vibration of what I'm like, and also just I'm a guest. That experience, this timeless sense of me, completely not defined by physicality. That's why we really encourage the experience sessions, because I'm going into that experience, and that is like a really concentrated, and I don't mean like violent concentrated, I mean it's like a really rich experience that helps fast track to help me to let go of the impact of physicality. Also, what we experience in the experience sessions, so these evening meditation sessions, is something that Pauline had mentioned about, is that in that experience of silence, that I'm also experiencing my spiritual parent. Now, we always actually have two parents. Now, when we're in physicality and that consciousness, we relate to who we have grown up with, who has raised us. For some, it could be an adopted, they were adopted. It could have been the friends who they identify with. It could have been a biological parent. But I am defined by what I feel has supported me and nurtured me growing up. But when we start to remember we're actually consciousness itself, that my true nature, underneath all this, the core of who I am is consciousness. My true nature is pure. All those 7 qualities we talked about. My true parent as a spiritual parent, me as a soul, is a supreme soul. Souls, remember, is God in different religions, but who's also consciousness and his pure state. And being in that presence of that one, and in that silence, and that's what the experience sessions are, to be seen for who I really am, to be in that pure vibration, which is my original vibration. I heal. When you hear that term in the West, like speaks to like, this is who I truly have, what is truly in common with what I really am like. And so this is another part about what nurtures and protects the true sense of who I am, is having that experience with my spiritual parent. And so this is ultimately about detachment. Like I am letting go of the attachments of that which isn't me, so that I can be in the true experience of myself. And in that experience of that freedom we had in our little experience, and the experience of being with the Supreme Soul, my spiritual parent, I'm also experiencing power. There's power when I experience silence. There's power when I experience peace. There's power when I experience the pure sense of who I really am. And I know that this has been mentioned by Pauline, is the last thing. These sessions are so condensed, I wish we had more time, but is putting them into actions. So a part of what that can really look like, and we're obviously happy to have another session that's for those who come to this session, because we're looking at progression, but it's not progression that moves away from the basics. It's how do I use the basics in everyday life, is that I want to learn to feel, that I am consciousness while I'm in this body and while walking and moving around. That I want to start to use my power of my awareness, even ask those selective questions, use that throughout the day, keeping my awareness elevated, being very clear of what my awareness is, what my thinking is like. And that's why the key thing is that soul consciousness is really important, because when I have, that trust that my true sense of who I am is that I'm a pure soul, then my thoughts are from that foundation. Because without that awareness of who I truly am, and it's just about thoughts and just about awareness alone, there's all this other stuff though, I've been through this, I had this experience, people think about this of me, that the world of what, that reality of being a soul is that none of that stuff is actually who you are. That stuff has built up through time, and I've become very familiar with it. So I know we had to go through that list. I'm very happy to have another continued session, mainly to have chances to experiment with that. But I will leave that for you to think about, and you would let me know. But I just want to see if you have any final thoughts and questions before we have just a little reflection, because I know we're running out of time. So we'll just have another reflection right now, just to close things off. Hopefully you have a few more minutes. Oh, here Paulina shared, surrounding yourself in a community of souls with the same values, interests, and etc. will help us in this journey. Now I'm stopping the sharing because I wanted to say I 1000% agree. And this was something I forgot to write on this list is yes. One thing that really, really is important is to be able to have others that you feel that can nurture this interest and this motivation. And I know what happens is that, when I have the students that and others that, like-minded souls at work, it keeps it very vibrant. And it's not, it's not about insulting those who are not in that experience. In fact, the whole point is that when I become full, I will be able to benefit those who are not. If anything, especially in my vision, my awareness, and in my vibrations, that I use those times to actually learn, to integrate, to stay real. But I value the time I have with those who are also interested in that, and it's like this, this common goal, and it really helps. Like I can't even convey how much it helps. We have one soul who actually has to join in remotely from Wyoming because there's no center there. Every day she joins, and she always shares when she has a chance to go to a retreat center or she comes to visit, which is very, very, very rare. But she just really, she cherishes that time. Where for us, we can take it for granted because we're so used to it. But she takes so much out of it. And a big part of basically, I use that word cherish for this particular workshop is this is what it's about, is that I need to learn how to cherish this journey, cherish this experience. The reason why is because when you cherish something, it's so meaningful and valuable that it's very natural. You'll stay true to what matters. And so if that's the final thought before we go on reflection, is that's why the whole point of this is that it develops a very deep and very natural sense of investing in something that matters to you and it's not for anybody else. So thank you for that final sharing, Pauline. That's very, very important. So just some final thoughts. Just at this moment right now, it's what do I feel? What can I take away from this session? If I've written notes, that's good. I can go back to them, but just any feelings or just one or two thoughts or realizations, keeping it very simple just for now. And if I don't even know why that thought, those realizations, or maybe that feeling, I don't have to go into the depths of it right now. I can if I want, but it's more, what am I gonna just keep like a bit of a flavor with me, so that all the details I learned, they'll be locked inside it and I can access it later. But right now, one thing. That one thing that speaks to me that I can take for the next while, next hour, or if I have time, I can jot down more things that matter to me. But I'm learning right now to bring everything into, again, a simple thought, a simple awareness that resonates. I'm learning to become just like my spiritual parent. Bring everything into a nice, beautiful seed. Seeds are packed with richness, nutrients. This is why they're so valuable, more valuable than flowers, although it's not apparent. Without the seed, there is no flower. Without the foundation, there is no building. So this time I spend with myself to really nurture what matters, keep that feeling going, why I'm on this journey. That in itself brings so much meaning and quality in my life. Om Shanti. So we just have blessings for everyone. So thank you, Pauline and Sheila, for joining. And there are blessings for everyone. So Pauline, this one's for you. Thank you for your thoughts that you shared. You are a brilliant soul who radiates with the beauty of valuing what is eternal in the self. So when we were choosing these blessings, it was specifically when we're choosing actually particularly for this session, this aspect of this true pure sense of who you are. So you are a brilliant soul who radiates with the beauty of valuing what is eternal in the self. So we will send these out to you. So thank you again, Pauline, for joining. Sheila, this one is for you. You are a wise soul who understands that the quantity of one's self-belief ultimately drives the quality of one's life. So this is this piece about when I get to practice and action, it is really about I am creating quality of life. This is why it's actually when I'm a soul in a body, that quality of life is actually relevant, because that's all we want actually is quality of life. And now we're learning what is going to make that happen. So thank you again, Sheila. You are a wise soul who understands that the quantity of one's self-belief ultimately drives the quality of one's life. So for those who join on YouTube, this one's for you. You are a wise soul who is able to bring stability, patience, and understanding to every moment by diving far below the waves of situations into the depths of personal potential. So we hope that everyone takes all these blessings personally for yourself. And for those I know that who wanted to join, we'll be sending out those to them personally as well. So thank you again for joining. If you have any last thoughts, you're welcome to share. But we really, really appreciate all your thoughts you've shared. And please know that if you want, we can always take those, because we kind of flew through those points. But we can always, the whole point was that we can definitely reflect on them. I want you to learn how to experience them as well. So thank you for your time. And thank you for your thoughts. I've also learned so much as well. I think that the chat will be saved, so I might actually send that to you as well, if that is useful for your own notes. All right, take care. Om Shanti.